My name is Christopher Roy, and this is my presentation for SPP 410 Psychology of Sports Injury for California Baptist University. Today, I will be presenting a biopsychosocial rationale for the rehabilitation of ankle sprains in collegiate female basketball players. I've titled this presentation The Psychology of Returning to the Court. Over the next several minutes, we will explore why this specific population and injury matter, the theoretical foundations that guide my approach, the psychological factors that affect rehabilitation, barriers these athletes face, and evidence-based strategies to overcome them. I will also share the verse that serves as my mission statement for this calling. Now let's begin. For this project, I chose to focus on collegiate female basketball players between the ages of 18 and 22, competing at the NCAA Division 1, 2, and 3 levels. I want to be honest with you. When I first started thinking about this project, I knew I wanted to choose a sport that I could really sink my teeth into. I've always loved basketball, the fast pace, the teamwork, the intensity. But more than that, I have watched friends and family members go through the frustration of sitting on the bench with an injury. I've seen how much the mental side of things can make or break the recovery. So why ankle sprains are in particularly? If you have ever watched a basketball game, you know how much stress gets put on the ankles. Players are consistently jumping, cutting, landing, and fighting for position. According to research by Lies and colleagues in 2025, ankle and hindfoot injuries made up over 22% of all injuries in collegiate basketball players, more than any other type of injury. Winnie and others found that ankle sprains alone account for about a quarter of all basketball injuries. But here's the key point. As Dr. Breuer's book emphasizes, we cannot just look at the physical damage. A 20-year-old athlete whose identity is wrapped up in being a basketball player faces fear, anxiety, and social pressures when injured. Additionally, research by Parsons and colleagues in 2021 highlights that women's sports often do not receive the same resources as men's sports, affecting access to trainers and quality facilities. That is why I'm using the biopsychosocial model. It is not just academic theory, it is practical necessity for the population. To effectively help these athletes recover, we need strong theoretical foundations. I will highlight the three core theories. First, cognitive appraisal models, developed by Lazarus and Folkman in 1984 and later adapted for the sport by Weiss, Bornstall, and colleagues in 1998. Here is what makes this theory so important. It tells us that athletes' psychological response to injury is not determined by the injury itself, but how she appraises or interprets that injury. Let me explain the two types of appraisals. Primary appraisal involves evaluating the significance of the injury for personal well-being. A collegiate basketball player might ask herself, is this ankle sprain threatening my career? Am I going to lose my scholarship? Secondary appraisal involves evaluating available coping resources. She asks, do I have the skills, support, and medical care to handle this rehabilitation? For female collegiate basketball players, these appraisals are uniquely challenging because of their dual roles as students and athletes. Primary appraisals may involve concerns about disappointing coaches, losing their starting position, or falling behind academically. Second, social support theory developed by Cohen and Wills in the 1985. This theory proposes that social support acts as a buffer against stress. There are four key functions of support. Emotional support provides empathy and caring. Informational support provides advice and guidance. Tangible support provides practical assistance, and companionship provides a sense of belonging. For our population, this is vital. Injured athletes often feel isolated from teammates when removed from practice and competition. A coach who communicates patience with recovery and a trainer who provides clear information can significantly influence rehabilitation outcomes. Third theory is the theory of planned behavior developed by Isaac Azen in 1991. This theory helps us predict whether an athlete will actually complete her rehabilitation exercises. It breaks down into three components. First, attitude. Does this athlete view rehabilitation exercise as beneficial to her return to play goals? If she believes ankle exercise will get her back on the court faster, her attitude will be positive. Second, subjective norm. What does the athlete perceive as social pressure from coaches, trainers, teammates, and family? If her coach is saying, tough it out, but her athlete trainer is saying, follow the protocol carefully, she receives mixed messages. That social pressure matters. Third, perceived behavioral control. This is the athlete's belief in her ability to perform rehabilitation exercises correctly, especially when experiencing pain or setbacks. If she lacks confidence in her ability to do the exercises, she will not adhere regardless of her intentions. Together, these three components shape behavior intention, which is the primary predictor of actual behavior. So why do these three theories matter for female basketball players? First, they address the unique pressure to play through pain. Hughes and Coakley in their 1991 research on the sports ethic found that athletes are socialized to accept pain and injury as normal, to ignore pain and play hurt. These theories help us understand and challenge that culture. Second, these theories account for fluctuating motivation during long rehabilitation protocols. An ankle sprain may take 6 to 12 weeks to fully heal. Motivation rarely stays constant. These frameworks give us a roadmap for supporting athletes through the ups and downs. Now let us look at these three specific psychological factors that affect rehabilitation for our population. Factor 1. Psychological distress. Injured collegiate athletes frequently experience fear of re-injury, anxiety about performance, self-doubt, and sometimes even depression. Let me unpack what this actually looks like for a 20-year-old point guard. She has spent her entire life working for this moment, the scholarship, the starting position, the respect of her teammates. Then one awkward landing, and suddenly she is on the bench. Athletic identity is the term we use when self-worth becomes heavily tied to being a basketball player. When injury removes that role, it can trigger significant psychological stress. Keogh and colleagues published a study in 2024 that followed female college basketball players through recovery. They found that mental state fluctuated significantly during recovery, sometimes day to day, and these fluctuations directly predicted how well their bodies healed. This is not just emotion, this is biology. Factor 2. Social support dynamics and sports culture. The sports ethic described by Hughes and Coakley normalizes playing through pain and injury. Injured athletes often experience isolation from teammates when removed from practice and competition. On the other hand, social support from coaches who communicate patience, trainers who provide clear information, and teammates who maintain inclusion significantly influences rehabilitation outcomes. Factor 3. Rehabilitation adherence and motivation. According to the theory of planned behavior, perceived behavior control, the athletes believe in her ability to perform exercises correctly. It is the single strongest predictor of adherence. If she does not believe she can do the exercises, she will not do them, regardless of her intentions. Rehabilitation adherence is the single most important behavior determinant of recovery outcomes. Without it, the best medical care in the world will fail. Communication between the sports healthcare professional and the athlete is not just about giving instructions, it is the foundation of the entire rehabilitation relationship. Chapter 9 from the textbook outlines two primary functions of communication. First, the informational function. This includes explaining the diagnosis, describing the rehabilitation steps, providing timelines for recovery, and setting expectation. This is what most people think of when they imagine medical communication. But second, and equally important, is the social emotional function. This involves building rapport, showing empathy, reducing anxiety, and making the athlete feel heard as a person, not just as an injured body part. So, what are the common gaps in communication for female basketball players? Research shows that is often a lack of congruence between athlete and practitioner perceptions. The trainer might think that the athlete is doing fine psychologically, but the athlete is secretly terrified of re-injury. She might minimize her symptoms because she is afraid of being benched or seen as weak. Additionally, practitioners may use excessive technical jargon, telling an athlete she is laterally ligamentous instability is less helpful than saying the ligament on the outside of your ankles are stretched, and here is exactly how we will strengthen them. Here are specific strategies to enhance communications. Active listening involves verbal and nonverbal indicators that you are engaged. Fair paraphrasing what the athlete says shows you are listening. Reflecting feeling means naming the emotion you hear. For example, it sounds like you are really frustrated about missing practice. Asking open-ended questions like, what is your biggest fear right now about returning to the court? Invites deeper disclosure. When an athlete feels heard, her anxiety decreases and her trust in the rehabilitation process increases. That trust translates directly into better adherence and better outcomes. Let us talk about 5 barriers to psychological rehabilitation for female basketball players with ankle sprains, then 5 strategies to overcome them. Barrier 1, sports culture stigma. Hughes and Cogley found sports culture praises playing through pain. Admitting fears feels like weakness, so athletes hide their struggles. Barrier 2, identity disruption. Brewer says athletes tie self-worth to sports. Injury takes that away. She goes from starting point guard to injured on the bench. This kills motivation. Barrier 3, resource disparities. Parsons found women's sports get less funding, fewer psychologists, less mental health care, overworked trainers, real barriers. Barrier 4, re-injury of fear. Basketball requires jumping and cutting. A scared athlete moves differently. She hesitates. This actually increases re-injury risk. Barrier 5, lack of perceived control. From Ashton's theory, when athletes feel no say in recovery, motivation drops. Low control equals poor adherence equals poor recovery. Now the 5 strategies. Strategy 1, cognitive restructuring. From Lazarus and Folkman, help athletes change negative thoughts. This ends my career becomes this is the temporary setback. Strategy 2, goal setting. Break rehab into small goals, not recover from sprain. Instead, do 5 minutes of exercises today. Small wins build confidence. Strategy 3, imagery. Athletes visualize healing, blood flow repairing tissue. See themselves doing exercise correctly, see themselves landing shots safely. Strategy 4, performance enhancement groups. Bring injured athletes together in groups. They support each other. Coping athletes become role models, safe space to share. Strategy 5, relaxation and biofeedback. Gate control theory says anxiety opens pain gates. Relaxation closes them. Deep breaths changes pain perception. Biofeedback shows real-time muscle data. Summary: our 5 barriers are stigma, identity loss, resource gaps, fear, and low control. 5 strategies are restriction, goal setting, imagery, groups, and relaxation. These are not extras. These are core to rehabilitation. Address the psychological barriers and you improve healing, adherence, and safe return to sport. This is the biopsychosocial model in action. Before I discuss what I've learned is from this course, I wanted to share this verse that serves as my mission statement for this calling. Galatians chapter 6 verse 2 says, "Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ." Why did I choose this verse? Is an injured collegiate athlete is carrying a heavy burden. She carries the physical burden of pain. She carries the psychological burden of fear, anxiety, and identity loss. She carries the social burden of meeting expectations from coaches, teammates, family, and scholarship committees. The sports ethic tells her to hide these burdens. It tells her to play through the pain and never show weakness. But my calling as a future sports psychology consultant is to be someone who helps carry those burdens. How does this verse motivate me? It reminds me that psychological care is a spiritual care. When I help an athlete reframe a catastrophic thought, I am helping carry her burden. When I help her build confidence through goal settings, I'm helping her carry her burden. When I advocate for better resources for her team, I'm helping carry her burden. This verse transfers my work from a set of clinical interventions into a form of compassionate presence. This is what motivates me every day. Conclusion, this course has transformed my understanding of sports injury. My biggest takeaway is that biopsychosocial model is not just an abstract concept from chapter 1 from the textbook. It is practical daily roadmap for helping athletes heal. I now understand that adherence to rehabilitation is the single most important behavior determinant of recovery outcomes. Psychological interventions like goal setting, imagery, and cognitive restructuring are not soft skills. They are evidence based tools that directly influence biological healing. My two highlights from this course are: first, learning the psychological distress is not separate from physical recovery, it is embedded within it. Keog's 2024 research showing that mental state fluctuations directly predict healing outcomes was a wake up call for me. Second, learning about the role of gender disparities in sport. Parsons and colleagues opened my eyes to how resource gaps in women's sports create real barriers to psychological care. This is something I want to advocate for my career. What do I want to learn about more? I want to study gender specific interventions for female athletes. I want to learn how to change the sports ethic culture at the team level, not just with individual athletes. I want to understand how to build referral networks that actually work. How will I apply this learning? Moving forward, I will access all three domains: biological, psychological, and social when working with injured athletes. I will prioritize building perceived behavior control through goal setting. I will facilitate social support networks, and I will challenge the maladaptive sport culture norms that pressure athletes to return before they are medically or physiological ready. Thank you for attention through this presentation.